What is up, everyone? Glad you're tuned in today. Episode 23 of the podcast. I'm excited about it. I always am. Like, every episode is exciting to me. You're like, Parker, you get excited over the littlest things. Well, of course I do, because my guest today has taken time out of their busy schedule to discuss all things them. And so, yeah, I'm stoked. If you're here for the first time, welcome. And go ahead and subscribe if you like what you're listening to. That is one way that you can help support this podcast. Other ways, beyond financially what you're responsible for with respect to your internet bill or your data plan on your cell phone, you can follow us on social media at The Blade Dive. You can also tell a friend about what you're listening to on this show. That's how this thing really takes off. Word of mouth. I know that's old school, but I'm still a fan of it. Tell a friend. That is the number one way I think you can help out the podcast. All right, I get a lot of messages about, hey, Parker, why do you do the introduction before the introduction? And, I think it's just kind of like a preface to a book, I'm sure everybody who's listening right now has probably skipped the preface of a book. I know I have, because it's usually the first page and you don't give a shit. But I give a shit, and so I'm telling you who the individual is. My guest today is Jeremy Carpenter. And Jeremy is the dude for Halfpipes right now. He's the best in the world. He won't own that title, but I'm going to give it to him. He is contributing seasonally as an employee at Laax, and man, everybody, including some of the best athletes in the world, tip their hat to that pipe being the best place to ride Halfpipe right now. So I think that says something. Jeremy began his career in Colorado, and it quickly exploded and took advantage of opportunities with SPT, traveled North America, built pipes all within that continent. He jumped over the pond and built a halfpipe down at Perisher in Australia, and is currently a part of the Stomping Grounds crew with Charles Beckinsale and Brandon Dodds. Fun fact, this is the second Jeremy on the Blade Dive. Quick shout out to the Southern Hemisphere folks. If you're at home right now, grab your favorite drink, kick your feet up, and if you're in the machine, turn up the volume.
Just go ahead and give it the juice.
Here we go. We are back in the virtual booth. And man, the person that's with me today, I've been looking forward to talking to for quite some time. I had this conversation envisioned, planned out in my head since this thought of producing this podcast was a very embryonic idea. Just a fart in church of a concept, just nothing even on paper. And Jeremy Carpenter was somebody that I wanted to talk to and have him tell his story. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk all things Halfpipe, hopefully, and we're definitely going to get into what it is to be just a person in the industry, a good human being in the industry, but what the carp does to make that magic happen on the snow. So, Jeremy, welcome, man. Excited to have you on the Blade Dive for sure.
Thank you. Hello, Blade Dive. It's cool to be on here.
Oh, man, it's cool to have you, and I'm glad you could make the time, and we could logistically piece this together. Speaking of time, now is a perfect moment for me to thank our sponsor, Prenoth. This podcast, The Blade Dive, is presented by them. Can't thank them enough for all their support. They are great people, and I'm glad that they back this podcast. Jeremy, I'm sure you've listened to the show before. We kick things off with a special guest question, kind of a good way to break the ice, laugh a little bit. What do you think? You cool with that, making that happen?
Yeah, let's hear it. Who is it?
Well, it's something, I don't think it's anything you can't handle. It's from Brandon Dodds.
I'm seated.
Yo, what's up, Blade Dive? Jeremy, Parker, how you guys doing? So stoked you're on here, Jeremy. So I wanted to ask Jeremy a question about building halfpipes, since he's clearly established himself as one of the best in the world at doing it. It's an art form, it's a lot of dedication, and there's only a handful of you guys that build those types of halfpipes. So, Jeremy, without giving away all your secrets, just tell us about the time and dedication and what actually goes into building pipes at that level, and maybe specifically talk about the one in Sauce Fe, because that's a special one on the glacier where it's actually moving and you're having to fill crevasses and all that good stuff. But yeah, I've never seen anybody put in the hours you do, Jeremy, and just tell the world about all those hours that it takes to actually build those types of half pipes. All right, boys, have a good one. Later.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Brandon. That's cool. Yeah, what kind of dedication does it take, or the hours that does it take? It takes a long time. It does take a while. That pipe in Sauce Fe, the slush is the biggest problem there. It's in the reverse of what most of us are used to. You go from warm snow to cold snow. It goes from summer conditions into a winter environment. And so you build it with slush, and then the thing freezes. Just bulletproof. It's hard to get a good finish on that thing.
That is pretty ironic, actually. And you also brought up a really interesting piece of data that was a good point, too. Just with the snow type that you're dealing with, and it kind of being the reverse of what you would think it would be, that's trippy. I mean, that's a bit of an experience in itself. Based on that, I mean, I'd have to ask, snow types everywhere in the world, doesn't matter where's your favorite place to build a half pipe based on snow?
Oh, man. The best snow that I ever pushed was in Silverton. That it was through SBT. Frank was leading that project. It was Sean's private pipe in Silverton just before the Olympics, and it was made out of avalanche snow. It was the coolest snow. It was like durable because it was natural snow that had been rolled down via avalanche into this lower area where we could grab it. So it was super durable, but it was so silky. The only downfall to that snowpack was the scree. The rocks were all over that snowpack. So there was it was kind of peppered with rocks, but other than that snow was amazing.
So you didn't have to process that snow at all, moving around, nothing. That was all done by Mother Nature for you.
It could not be any more perfect. I've never seen more perfect snow than that. Natural snow, deep natural snow that had been rolled over.
Okay, so Mother Nature may have some influence in man-made snow, temps, etc. But I'd have to assume that would be maybe the worst snow that you'd have to deal with in order to build a half pipe. Am I right or wrong there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, sometimes it's so wet that you don't have a choice. I think it was Killington. That pipe was probably more wet than the snow we have in Sauce Fe, and that's saying something. And we didn't have time to dry it out. It was for television timeline. You can't move it. You showed up with 2 weeks to build it, which was such a short amount of time. We were building those pipes in the Dew Tour. It's such I think it was the first year we did. I think it was only the first year we did 10-day builds. It was ridiculous. 10-day builds from start to finish. Nothing was pushed. A lot of times there was no earth foundation, and we're building a half pipe in 10 days. Two rideable for practice day. It was all out.
That's heavy. I will say 10 days is awfully short to build something. That's just my take on it. I feel like 2 weeks is short to build something of that caliber. And from memory, I think it was roughly 2.5, 3 weeks that Jake Engel and Debbie Caves pieced together the half pipe at Copper. And that to me was just, I was going, wow, that's okay. So that's what you do if you step back and let people do their job. Holy shit. But I would want to know too, if you feel like that's enough time. I would want to know your 2 cents on that. Do you think that 10 days is enough time to mentally, physically do your job and piece something like that together?
It's not enough time. It's not enough time. It's not healthy at all. That was Brad Herder and I were doing that. And Brad is he's so talented in coming up with new ways. When we were just out of options, Brad would come up with something that neither one of us had seen before. In my mind, Brad is still the best half pipe builder out there. He could he just had these cool ways of coming up with new, efficient ways to move the snow.
Well, Brad is somebody that I want to catch up with, so maybe Brad's listening and he can come on the Blade Dive and talk about his snow moving experiences. I just don't feel like 10 days is enough time. I mean, I just
even
don't.
2 weeks that even 2 weeks that you were saying Jake and Debbie were doing, that's hard to get that done in 2 weeks. You're pushing pretty hard to do that too.
Yeah, and from memory, that's what it was. It was right at that, like 2 to 3 weeks, something around that time frame. But there was so much more that happened during and before to make that all come to fruition. There was a stupid amount of snowmaking that had to happen. Occasionally there's like a third operator involved, and there's some mechanics that support that. And then beyond that, there's the financial backing of the resort. There's the Grand Prix team that's there. Eric Webster. You had all these people that came together to produce that Halfpipe from memory, and it was so impressive to see it occur.
Yeah.
So it was quite the feat. So hats off to those two for sure, Debbie and Jake Ingram.
Absolutely,
definitely. Thanks, Brandon. That was an awesome question, and I appreciated the insight too, just with respect to how you maybe do things, man, and where your head's at, Jeremy. You mentioned Australia. Australia was a part of your career, and you spent some time down there building the pipe alongside some incredible operators. But Australia was something that I really appreciated, and I valued the experience overall. And I'd want to know, like, do you miss it? Were you stoked on being down there? What was that like? Were you stoked on riding Perisher?
I did. I really liked Perisher. I liked riding Perisher because it was like this medium pitch where you could just gun it all the time. You just full throttle snowboarding. You never really had to do any speed checks. And then the pipe there, my favorite half pipe to ride, is a 12-degree pitch, massive drop in. So the 12 degrees was just enough to keep any air that you could manage to make on the first hit. You could make it all the way down, but it was such a party. It was right there in the front valley, right in front of the parking lot there. Families, ski school, pros. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I rode Perisher maybe less than a handful of times, but it was every time I went, it was so much fun. I rode Threadbow a whole lot. I rode Threadbow a ton. But would you ever go back?
Sure. Yeah, I really did enjoy my time in Perisher, and then I lived right there on the hill, or just at the bottom of the hill. I could see the Halfpipe from my bedroom window, so I'd wake up. I had a pair of sunglasses laying on the ledge. So I'd stand up in my underwear, put the sunglasses on, pull the curtains open, see how the pipe was riding, shut the curtains. I'd keep the sunglasses on, of course, just for the underwear effect. And then,
risky business.
Get ready and go ride the pipe. I really enjoyed Perisher. It was fun.
You're there for a job, and it's probably difficult to do some exploring. I know that I was able to get out and see some of the sites, which was rad. I valued that. I took that away. I treasured that. I'll never forget those experiences. But were you able to do that? Experience the culture the way you wanted to?
With most of these jobs, most of these things that I'm doing outside of the States is that I don't get to experience it. I have got to
that's a good point.
Get a visa to be there. It's a special permission visa. So Australia had a situation where you had 28 days after your visa expired. When you were last day of work, you had 28 days to enjoy the country. I went on one road trip, cruised around some of the beaches in a van, and that was cool. And Switzerland's the same kind of thing for me. You mentioned that I'm working in Laax. I have to leave when the snow melts, my visa melts, and it's time for me to go. Switzerland has the 3 months visitor permit that I can use, so that's super nice. But it's just it's hard to really absorb the place when you're kind of being pushed out the door constantly.
Oh, that's a really good point. I don't know if I ever felt like I was being pushed out the door, though. I definitely felt as though I had a limited amount of time there, and it was a struggle to kind of capitalize on seeing everything that I could around me. But I was very thankful for my fiance at the time, now my wife, who was able to show me the country and go, "Here you go, you ignorant dude. Check this out. How beautiful is this?" It was rad. But yeah, there's definitely a time constraint there, and you're there for a job for sure. That's fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, at least there's snowboarding, so that's the one thing,
Yeah.
And if I had to answer that question, what I miss about Australia is riding parachute. I loved cruising around there at that like full throttle. You didn't really have to do any speed checks, and the gum trees, they're so cool. Those gum trees, those high alpine gum trees.
Absolutely.
Riding through those gum trees is unique.
Yeah. Well, like Charles was saying, Marco Grillick was tripping out. He was saying like, "It's like a fucking jungle, man." Getting all stoked on riding the gum trees. I was too, though, but I appreciated the wildlife down there as well, like having the wombats come out on the snow and the kangaroos, and that was awesome.
Yeah,
that was a really cool experience altogether for sure.
Yeah, different, huh?
And speaking of Australia, and it being an amazing place, I've got Mr. Charles Beckinsale's special guest question queued up for you next. I will go ahead and play that for you now.
Hey guys, it's Charles Beckinsale. I just wanted to call in because I'm a huge Jeremy Carpenter fan. I first met Jeremy a long time ago now in Perisher, where he had this huge reputation as this amazing halfpipe cutter that was coming out from the States to work with us at Perisher. And, he rocked up and was faced with an old 275 cat and a clapped out 18-foot HPG cutter. Most people since that day have turned their nose up, but Jeremy was just stoked to get in there and make probably the best 18-foot halfpipe I think any of us have ever ridden, still to this day. And the question I had for him was around the comedy nights that used to happen in the Sundeck bar above the halfpipe each week. Just when he'd finished cutting the halfpipe, so many drunk people would come rolling out of that place. And the story I want to hear about tonight would be the one about the guy he chased across the bridge. Love you, brother. Thanks for what you do.
Thanks, Charlie. Those two stories are not connected, actually. The Sun Deck is a restaurant that sits directly above the Halfpipe, and on Tuesdays I had the night off, only Tuesdays, because they had comedy night, and people would go up there, get super drunk, and then just stomp down through the Halfpipe. It's Australia, it's warm, and they would just annihilate the Halfpipe. And so that was the night that I always had off and at Perisher because of that. It was great. I would go get drunk there too. But this guy that he's talking about that I ran down across the bridge, it was during a daytime cut. We cut the pipe early, just what works with the pipe. And this guy pulled up to the top like he was going to drop in, and I gave a little boop boop, on the horn. Hey man, I'm waving at him like, do not drop in. I had just finished the wall. And those HPGs, what they do is push the snow up. It's a chain and paddle system. They push the snow up, which is really nice in that soft snow. You can keep a wall way longer instead of cutting it away. And this kid, he looked at me and he understood what I was saying. And then he dropped in and proceeded to put 3 deep turns into that wall.
Oh
yeah,
shit, dude.
I was so pissed. And so he came to a stop at the bottom of the pipe to appreciate his work.
Wow.
And that was it was too much for me, man. I hit park and jumped out of that machine in full sprint. And he realized he was in trouble. He started fleeing. He rode just a little bit further down into the crowd. This was the end of the day. It wasn't even the end of the day. It was late afternoon, but it was still busy. And he unstraps his board, and I am in full sprint. I am going to take this kid out. And he looks up, he unstraps his board, he looks up, he sees me coming, and he starts running. And he runs out of the village, like, and there's you go across a river, a footbridge to get to the parking area. And it was just straight out of a movie. He's dodging through people, and I'm dodging through people. And luckily, I didn't take out any kids or anything, but I did catch that kid. And oh man, I didn't hit him or anything. I just kind of shook him around. I grew up in Iowa, and a big high school sport and college sport is wrestling. And I was a wrestler, and I had this kid in it, like it's not a neck hold, but you wrap your arm around the back of his neck, and then you've got your elbow into his chest. And I was just pushing him back and forth really hard, like shaking him around. Don't you ever. And I lost my shit on that one.
Oh, wow, dude.
He was terrified.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just went back to my work.
You just wanted to be heard. Did you say anything to him further other than what you did?
I was shaking him around and saying, do you think I did that for you? Do you think that I just spent 3 hours cutting that wall for you? And yeah, he was scared.
Wow.
He was pretty scared.
Yeah.
I scared myself on that one.
Well, it's kind of like Picasso with a painting, or any artist for that matter. You finish your painting. I'm sure it took you time. I know it took you time to get the wall like that, but then it's like on a painting, somebody comes up and just takes a paintbrush and puts a line of color right over the painting.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stories that come out of Mount Hood from back in the day when people used to try to poach the pipes, like all of the camps. James Jackson's got some stories of when he was the park manager, the on-hill manager, when people would poach the pipe after it was finished. It's your baby, and you just had somebody take it and destroy it. You want to kill them for sure. We were throwing rakes at people, tackling people. That was me running that kid down and shaking him around. It was kind of a mellow story compared to the stuff that comes out of Mount Hood from the back days.
I know you mentioned it earlier that you were digging up a hood, but were you a part of that scene?
A little bit. I was there for 4 seasons, and my first season was mostly hand shaping, and then it went more into the machine.
Rad. Big thanks to Charles, by the way. What a question. Man, that's a really great question. Jeremy Carpenter, the Undertaker, the wrestler. I can see that for sure. Moving along and discussing just you growing up on a farm. You and I chatted offline about that a little bit. That was in Iowa. And yeah, I mean, you just mentioned that too with the wrestling thing, but growing up in Iowa, paint that picture for us.
It was a magical childhood to grow up on a farm. I think it's really cool. But at some point I started wanting to be around other kids. You want to play with other kids. There's nobody around. And when we moved into town, when I was 9 years old, we moved off the farm, and that was really cool to be around other kids. But that was the end of the farm. Other than that, my childhood was pretty normal. Very rural still. We moved to a small town. There wasn't much going on there. The graduating class in my high school was 86. Like skateboarding, when that came through in the 80s, every kid in town had a skateboard, and we could not use them. The streets were just battered, destroyed asphalt. There was no curbs. There was not even a curb and gutter system in town. It was just ditches all the way through town. Sidewalks weren't smooth enough to ride a skateboard on. There was one place, the tennis courts, but we just didn't know what to do with them. So we all had these neon colored side rail grab skateboards, and they just sat and gathered dust. I was a little jealous of that, actually. All the kids that have these opportunities in life, that maybe you grew up surfing, or maybe you grew up skating, or whatever you grew up doing. Maybe you played golf. There's a lot of opportunities that you don't get on a farm, but it was still really cool to just be around animals all the time. And we had a few ponds on the property and 200 acres of woods. So it was still cool, though.
Yeah. So the farm, was it like Noah's Ark, tons of animals, or just pigs? I gotta ask.
There were 200 sows, and they were pushing out little babies as fast as they could. There was 50 beef cattle, handful of sheep, one horse that we used in the wintertime, basically to access the fields when you couldn't get a truck into the fields because of snow. A dog, a bunch of cats. That was about it.
Right on. Well, a farm is a ton of work. Like, there's so many moving pieces to a farm, and animals living and animals dying. But you were probably picking up like pigs in a bucket of a tractor at some point, I'd have to imagine.
Well, a lot of dead things on farms. A lot of dying animals. It's kind of, you get numb to it. The eating meat was, you knew where it was coming from. Put it that way. Yeah, for sure. There was dead pigs around. There was all kinds of that stuff. But
yeah, and I mean, living on a farm, there's some expectation there. It's work. You got to get it done. You're moving forward with the day. Shit happens. You got to take care of it. But, in today's world, and I'm sure back then, the grocery store experience is always censored, so you never really think about where you're getting your food from. I'm sure some people do, but did you ever name the pigs?
Oh, they didn't have names.
No?
I mean, they didn't have names.
You weren't going, well, where's Wilbur at?
No, but if they were orphaned, they were more friendly for sure. Like sheep, when they're orphaned, God, they're worse than dogs. They're more needy than a dog. They need so much attention when they don't have any parents anymore.
Interesting. Did you ever have to, with the sheep, herd the sheep, corral the sheep, put them in their pen, etc.?
No. I had to catch pigs by the back leg and hold them up, squealing and shaking, while my mom grabbed their poor little testicles and snapped them off with a razor blade and threw them off to the side.
Oh my God. I'm laughing, not at the pig, but just absorbing the painful image that is.
Yeah. The dog loved it. The dog would just eat them up. She would eat them as fast as they hit the ground until she couldn't take it anymore. Hopefully you're not eating dinner right now, but yeah, she would eat those testicles until she threw up and come back and eat more. It was just such a delicacy, right?
I guess. Oh my God. I will say, quick story tangent. The one time that I actually got to explore a piece of Australian farmland was with a coworker of mine, Peter. He took me out to his family's property, and he was like, "Oh, mate, you want to herd the sheep?" I was like, "Well, shit, what do I?" He's like, "Oh, you got to get on the motorbike." I'm like, "Okay, well, what does that entail?" And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna go around, herd the sheep, fucking, bring them back." So I got this motorbike, and if you corral, or if you find a lamb that's run away and it's solo, you can pick it up, and they were riding around with it between their legs. So imagine herding the sheep, and you find this lamb that's all alone, you grab it, scoop it up, and then put it in between your legs on the motorbike.
Sounds tricky.
It's super tricky. I couldn't do it. And so this lamb was on its own. I found it. I found a bungee cord and strapped it to the back. And I have a picture of it somewhere, but it's just chilling on the back of this motorbike, strapped down. It was fine. Brought him back to the herd, and all was well.
You drove around with a lamb bungee cord to the back of your motorcycle?
Yes, that is correct. Quickly got back to the herd, got it with the rest of the sheep, and I was super proud. I was like, I did it. Like I made it. I feel like I have taken care of the animal. But come to realize later, I'm talking to Peter, and he's like, "Oh, mate, you could fucking left that one. Not a big deal, Coyote. Get it?" I'm just like, okay. But I learned a lot, and I'd have to imagine growing up on a farm. I know you said you were fairly young. Maybe you learned something. Maybe it was simple. Maybe it was something you took away and you still use today. But work ethic, if nothing else.
I think what the farm teaches you is how to work.
Yeah.
Which really paid off for me in the ski business, actually, because my first job in
a good point, though,
in
for
the
sure.
terrain park world was with Frank at Mount Hood Snowboard Camp, and it was manual labor. We were hand shaping the pipe that first year. The cutter came through like once a week or something to that effect, but it was mostly hand shaping. We built it at the beginning of the season by hand, and then didn't see the machine much. It was manual labor, and so that was one of the things I was good at. I was good at a shovel and working all day long and in the sun or whatever. And when I went up to Hood, I thought I'd be a pro snowboarder, and got there and realized I was way behind the game. But I was good with the shovel, and I could work my ass off. So that paid off in the end.
Do you think that with just, I know you're talking about handwork and building things out of snow, but so the farm was a big part of, or was it a big part of you developing, redefining your work ethic and how you built pipes?
For sure.
That's sick.
For sure.
That's
Without
awesome.
a doubt. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Coming from Iowa, there, I think any place where you've got a strong farming background or strong farming culture, you've got a strong work ethic around that. So yeah, that made a big difference with the Halfpipe for sure.
Very cool. Shout out to your mom and dad, dude.
Yeah, mom and dad.
Yeah, mom and dad. Positive influences working on the farm and that work ethic. Hell yeah. I got to know, just with respect to equipment, I mean, you mentioned maybe you were operating them as kid. Was that something that you were doing? Were they around your life early on?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a little bit. I'm not a lot. I was still pretty young, but I did, transport, just take a tractor from one place to the next. I remember once my dad put me onto the tractor and left it in first gear, and we had to take two vehicles. He was in the pickup and I was on the tractor, and he said, just turn it when you want to stop, just turn off the key. And those were the instructions, because I couldn't reach the pedals.
Yes. Farm life. I'm amused by simple things, and by that I mean just watching a baler through the field go over the hay, and then out the ass end of the machine comes the bale of hay. Like, that to me is
it's magic, man. It's magic.
Yeah, it is. It's total magic. I love watching stuff like that, like Ferdinand the Bull. Like, hey, oh wow.
Yeah, it's satisfying, huh? It's just like comes out of turd.
That's well put. That's exactly what it is. Very well organized. Speaking of organized, and I think somebody else who is definitely a big player in the game in the halfpipe world, Eric Rosenwald, has a special guest question for you. He's written in, I'll read it for you, and it says, it takes a special brand of straight line OCD to babysit a pipe day in and out for an entire season and maintain it, hands down, is the best pipe in the world. In my opinion, very few possesses that passion and dedication. Would you agree or disagree? Also, what are the different operational challenges you encounter building and maintaining a pipe for the entirety of a season versus the one and done for a contest, knowing you're out after the event? Eric goes on to say, thanks for setting the bar higher and higher year after year.
Challenges between the event build and the season build. The event builds are just so much more time restrictive. You've got a lot of times a television timeline on it that's not going to move, and you arrive with just enough time to get it done, but maybe your machines will break, and maybe you don't have enough snow. All of those factors. I think it's more you have more time when you build it for the season if you're working at a ski area. And that's why I enjoy working at Laax, is working back at a ski area, because there's always tomorrow. For sure they want it done fast. For sure they want it done as fast as possible. And you're doing that. You're pushing yourself. And if you're not pushing yourself, somebody's going to come in and push you for you. But the difference, the challenges, I'd say the biggest thing is the time. And then with the OCD, maintaining that thing in the season, yeah, for sure. Maybe I have some OCD. I've been accused of this before, but I don't know. It's just meditation to me, I guess. Sitting in there and feeling the subtle movements and focusing on one thing for the duration, how many cuts it takes you. Yeah, it's a bit of meditation, and it's OCD for sure, but I do enjoy it. I also enjoyed grooming green runs when I was a piece driver, when I was on free grooming. I liked that too, because it was these real simple, small movements to make a straight line. It's the grading. That's what you're doing basically when you're maintaining a piece or a run, right? Is you're grading the whole time, and that's what you're doing when you're cutting the half pipe. It's the exact same thing. You're moving slower, but there's no real difference there. It's all grade work. You start off by grading the decks, and then you grade the walls with the cutter. It's grade work. So I do like it. It's meditation.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for unpacking that for us. That was deep. That was definitely deep. And another thing would be you've spent time over in Switzerland, and you probably have carried with you or still use terms like pieced and driver. What do you think about using those?
Yeah, you'll have to forgive me. I've absorbed small things from where I've been. Pieced is the ski run. And so that's how they say when they're talking about the run, it's the pieced. In Laax, the park is called P60 all day. It stands for, or not all day, that's our logo, but P60 was pieced number 60. So yeah, it's just European terms, and like they use driver. And this is terrible. If you were to ever call someone a driver in North America, you would get slapped.
That's true.
It's like this. You're not an operator; you're a driver. It's these two different levels of capabilities. But yeah, they don't have the same emotion behind the word. There, you're a driver. So
yeah. So what about if you called an operator or somebody in Europe an operator? How does that go over?
They don't have the word, so I don't know. You're a driver. That's what you're doing with. Yeah, that's what you are. You're a driver.
Yeah, see, that's so ironic because in North America you do that and people get offended, calling folks an operator. Versus in Europe, if you call a driver an operator, they don't give a shit.
No.
Yeah, they don't care. It's like, you call me an operator, whatever. It's all good. I'm not worried about it.
It's not really there. There's no. With operator, come on, it's very sexy, right?
Ooh, yes, that sells for sure. Yeah, it's like I'm an operator. I'm gonna put that on my resume. I'm totally guilty of that. I think my resume definitely says operator. But I think that's cool. Like you have definitely absorbed phrases, terms that originated elsewhere, and you're carrying them with you because that's how you talk. Like that's dope. That's awesome.
It's because how I normally talk. I can't stop it. It's like my first season in New Zealand, I came back saying rubbish. Trash was just such a dirty word, and then rubbish is just so much nicer, and you just kind of absorb it because that's what they use, and yeah, there it goes.
Yeah. Well, let's circle back. The career began somewhere. Where was that? Where did it begin?
It was Copper Mountain. I was I was a volunteer on the park crew, and then I'd been going up and working with Frank, and he taught me so much about the shovel and with the machine too. But then I had experience in shaping, so I became the foreman. They didn't have managers yet, so I was the foreman, and the drivers. Sorry, I'm just going to say it. I can't not say it. The drivers were making the jumps and the features too poppy. I didn't like how it was, and I would reshape them every night. I'd even leave the edges what they had shaped, and then I'd reshape the middle and say I'd like it more like this. And to me, without knowing what the machine could do, I thought that those two differences were night and day. And as far as riding it was concerned, it was night and day. But these guys were looking at me like, you want me to shave 2-3 inches off the lip? That's what you want me to do? Yeah, go do it yourself. And finally I said, yeah, fine. I will do it myself. Teach me how to run this machine. And they let me get in a couple of times, but they didn't want me to leave the rake. I was more valuable to them on a rake. So I got in the machine a couple of times, but that was it. And so I quit. And I went over to Breckenridge, which is right next door there, and said, I want to be in a machine. I went to the boss of the machines and asked what kind of experience I need to get in the machine. And he looked at me and he said, can you breathe?
Well, I mean, that's a simple requirement, but let's just with respect to training, how do we make that better? How do we improve on that? Whatever
we do, I think we could go so far in teaching the operators how to use the machine with that edge. And then it makes the machine more interesting. We're losing so many operators because they're bored. The machines are boring now. You can't feel them. They're super heavy. You can't feel what's happening under the machine. You can barely feel the blade. You can't hardly feel the tiller movement. But those older machines, they were lighter and they had enough power to spin the tracks. I don't understand why we need so much power. If you have enough power to spin the tracks, then you have too much power. I mean, I just don't get it. Why do we need so much power and have such heavy pieces of equipment? Well, I guess we need more power because we want to push more snow, but I just think it could be done better.
Well, I get what you saying that right there. I want you to take this and run with it. What would you do? What would you change? What would you improve?
I guess while we're on this subject, I guess what I would like to see, in my own stupid opinion, and it's just an opinion, is to see a samurai sword of a machine, a light machine. We can use the technology to make light frames, use the technology to make a lighter engine with the same power, and have a really sharp blade, have these cats that will let you do cool stuff. Like the old machines would let you do it, but the machines would break. They just weren't designed for it. But to be able to ride that edge, to ride the edge of the sword and not have a computer between you and that control.
Oh, dude, now we're really going down the wormhole. Well, it's kind of like, what are we doing? You know, what does the future look like? We're jumping way ahead and already answering that question, which I'm excited about. But the machine's got to walk on water, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's literally got to walk on water.
The machine is walking on water. Early season, you have very little snow. Late season, you are walking on water. It's slush. You need to stay on top of it. And then middle of the season, you got powder. The thing needs to be designed to walk on water, not this. It's not dirt. You know, we don't need this massive bulldozer. We need a samurai sword.
A samurai sword with a double edge. Yeah, and a sheath. But
hey,
yeah,
but speaking of, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you first. It's cool.
Oh, I was going to change the subject, but go ahead.
Oh, you can totally change it. I was just going to say that when you start the machine, it should just make a sound like it does it. You should shish, yeah, like shishing.
Shit, yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but change it.
I know. I was gonna talk about equipment, and because we have this audience that you created, which is super cool. Congratulations on the whole show.
Oh, hey, I can't take credit for it. It happens because people like yourselves, man, contribute.
Wow. The idea of the pipes and how they are going away. It sucks, right? But I've talked to some people, you know, Rosie, Frank. I think it's a common, everybody's agreement that the 22-foot pipe has kind of killed us with the progression, not the progression. It's just going away because people can't afford it. The 22-foot half pipe is too expensive. And it's too scary. It's great for the people that are going to have these events. It's the Olympic qualifying events and, you know, these televised events. We need to have those. Those are super cool to watch on TV, and they're amazing to watch in person. But there's no small pipe to ride anymore. So we at Laax, Lucas Zusht, he goes by Lukey. He designed that quick coupler that you may or may not have seen on YouTube for the cutter. It's a hands-free, no leak, zero hydraulic leak. Electronics are engaged. Or no, the electronics aren't engaged in that one. But all the hydraulics, all the mounting, everything, drop your blade, pick up your cutter, and you are going right now. Never getting out of the cab. It's great. He designed it from an excavator, and it's all quite heavy at this point, but it can be done. Can you imagine if every machine had a rear implement quick disconnect? Everybody that wants to push in the park, drop your tiller. Everybody that wants to build a ski run, drop your tiller, pick it back up. You can do this, and like right now, we could do that. That would be cool stuff, right?
Yeah, it would. I think it would be the shit. I would totally take my tiller off way more.
Yeah, you would if you could do it at a click of a button. It's so fun. You're like a little kid without your diaper on, you know, running around. You're free. When you get that tiller off, it's like it's a different world.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that on your Facebook page. I'm pretty sure that's where I don't think I watched on. If you have a link to that video, you should send it to me. I would love to share it.
I'll have to send it to you. I'll have to get that. It is on my Facebook page, yeah. And then I don't know how you would search it. I don't know what it's listed as. But I got off on that tangent. But I wanted to talk about the half pipes and how they're going away because of the 22 is so big. But since everybody's listening, the same idea, you guys, if you want a 13-footer, Zog said that they would consider building a new 13. So if you want a cool 13, another good shape 13, because we all know that 13 that's out there right now, the tranny is way too tight. It doesn't work so well. And then also they're talking about building a corner cutter too, a hip cutter. Sorry, they call hips corners in Europe. But a hip cutter, same thing that Rosie built. Who else was on your podcast that built that?
It was Cooper.
Cooper, yeah. So those guys already went and did something, which is really cool. But if we could have that on a factory type of scale where the mom and pop shops could buy these things, having a 13-footer at the mountain is not so expensive, and it's super fun. We could bring the half pipe back to life. And you had asked me, or we talked about the ROI, the return on investment with a half pipe.
Yeah, big buzzword there too, or buzz acronym, return on investment. Before we get into that, let me pivot and I'll throw our next special guest question at you, since it's half pipe related. And you're kind of going down the route of discussing 13s reinvigorating or breathing life back into the half pipe. So Frank Wells is our next special guest contribution, and Frank asks, so having the best half pipe in the world over the last couple of years and seeing the riding that's gone down, do you think that riders could progress with bigger half pipes being built?
I guess. Why not? The steeper, yeah. So Frank had mentioned that in his podcast that the Laax pipe was 19 degrees. It's not. Sorry, Frankie, but it's we measured it with a very expensive laser once upon a time. It's 18.2. It's only a touch over 18. It's crazy how just such a small, just a half a degree can make such a big difference in those things. But a bigger, steeper pipe, I don't see why the riding wouldn't get bigger.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the riding would definitely get bigger with larger transition. I think that would be inevitable. But maybe this is where that ROI comes back into play here, because building larger things definitely comes at a larger price. I don't see how it could potentially be less money, just with respect to what you're building and what you're up against. Time, materials, energy, resources, all of it. But what are your thoughts there? Because it becomes harder to offset that cost and sell that space.
Oh, well, this is just an opinion, another single opinion. But I would say no. I don't want to see them get any bigger. It's already so expensive. Even at these places like Laax, where the half pipe is front and center, and they have a televised event, it's just so expensive. And I don't know. I can't really say that it would be better for anything. Maybe they'll go bigger, and maybe they'll get the triples and whatever into it, but I'm not sure that it would be better.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate there too, just because I was stoked on Frank's question, and I thought that was a really good tie-in to the ROI piece. But larger transition costs larger dollars, so
Yeah, thanks, Frank, for asking, and thanks for calling in.
Absolutely. Excuse me. I really want to hit the contracting piece with you. You started your career and then you transitioned over to a specialty skill, and we've just attempted to dissect in a very small dose. of what the return on the investment is of going moving forward rather with building a half pipe or bringing somebody in to build a half pipe. It's difficult to talk about and not really upset people with just by saying, hey, it costs a lot of money to do this, and coming up with creative ways to offset the cost is maybe going to be a little difficult. But that had to have been, if you're consulting, you're contracting, you're traveling, like you're living out of a suitcase, you're in a hotel.
It's part of it. I don't think you can't be a contractor and not live in a hotel room. It's just part of it. And it's fun. It's interesting for sure. It's the best thing I ever did was be a contractor, basically because of the timelines. You just don't have any time to do anything but be efficient, move forward. And it puts you in a position where there's this sense of urgency that you'll never get at a ski area. It's just not there. There was somebody somewhere along the way was quoted as saying the amount of time it takes to do something will always be the amount of time available. So if you've got a week to build a half pipe, you're going to build a pipe in a week. But if you've got endless amount of time, it might take endless amount of time. So being a contractor, I wouldn't turn anybody away from being a contractor. It's a lot of work. You get to go to these other places. But Jeremiah Pebley had the best quote ever about being a contractor. He had returned from a project. I'm not sure where it was. I think it was Japan. And somebody asked him, hey, what was Japan like? How was Japan? They're thinking that he got to see Japan. But you quickly learn as a contractor that it's about the job. You show up, you go to work, and you leave. Yeah, you'll get a party in there sooner or later, or in between, and it'll probably be at the very end and a random one in the middle. But his response to how was Japan was, it looked a lot like the inside of a snowcat.
Switching gears, maybe what's your go-to meal in Switzerland?
It's meat and cheese and bread. That's what almost every meal is.
Meat, cheese, and bread.
Yeah, kind of. Some variation of that almost every time. But that cheese is good. That meat is good. That bread is good. It's all really nice.
Accommodation. So what are we talking about? Are we talking like Motel 6, Roach Motels, or are we talking like Emirates, creme de la creme? Like where are we crashing?
Don't ever remember creme de la creme. It was in between Airbnb and Motel 6, all of it. Some of them were not so nice. I think the nicer situations we stayed in was when we got a house. If we had more than a few people and we would get into a house together. And that was my favorite situation anyhow, because you just have more of a community feel with everybody. You wake up, you have the same kitchen and make your meals together, make your lunch together for the snowcat.
I would appreciate the house vibe more than I would the solo Motel 6 vibe. 100%. I might pivot again here. Charles Beckinsale and I were chatting, and he mentioned that you had a bit of a spiritual journey happen in life, which I think is dope. And I'd be excited for you to share that if you want to. You don't have to, but I'd be excited for you to go into detail.
Oh, yeah. I talked to him about that. He said he was going to mention that. My spiritual journey. So one of your questions to everybody is what defines you outside of the job. Part of that for me, I guess, would be spirituality. It sounds heavy. It sounds like I'm really into it when I say it like that, but I'm not so much. But I like to pay attention to spirituality. And I went to the Amazon jungle once upon a time and had ayahuasca for a month.
Wow.
17 times I had ayahuasca.
That's a journey. Did you feel led to go down there and do that? Was that something that you had put research into and you were just thinking, hey, this is something that I need to do. I feel the need to go and do that. Why did that happen? Why did you go do that?
I had no idea. No, I had no idea why I was going. I really didn't have a clue. I found out on my first ceremony why I was there. And that's just a separate story. But it was pretty heavy. I had no idea why I was going there. I just had this pressure, the one finger pressure, just pressing me. You should go to the Amazon. You should go check this stuff out. And I was terrified of it, honestly, because it's not a nice experience. You should be a little terrified of it, I guess. Well, that's a bit harsh. You don't need to be terrified of it, but I wouldn't do it for fun. It's not a nice experience. You're going to vomit. You're going to shit yourself. You're going to do them both at the same time. You're going to shit yourself while you're vomiting. Yeah, and it's scary. It can be super scary. The trip can be scary. I had my first ceremony was very powerful. It did a lot for me there as far as changing my life and some things that had happened in my past. But then some scary stuff happened, and I couldn't get over that, and I was basically terrified for the next 2 months. So for the next month that I was doing this.
Yeah, and I want to bring up a point with respect to religion, like, because I feel like people often take the religious term and they place it amongst or very similar as the analogy to spirituality. And I think that oftentimes those two words can very much get construed.
Yeah, for sure.
And because of that, they kind of take on their own meaning, I guess, for people would maybe be the best way I'm trying to put it. I think one person's definition of spirituality and being religious is different. And the two combined can maybe just be like oil and water. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that, but...
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a lot of different variations. The religion has spirituality in it, but you can be quote unquote religious and not be a spiritual person. You can just be doing it because your neighbor's doing it, because you think it's a good political move, whatever. It doesn't, people that call themselves religious are sometimes maybe not spiritual, but my mom is very spiritual, and she made sure that we grew up in the church. And the religion, as far as religions go, there's been a lot of religions out there that have come and gone, and some of it is contradictory, some of it is hard to swallow for me, but spirituality is there if you can pick up on it. And I think religions are a great introduction to spirituality. And if that's your introduction to spirituality, or whatever that is, maybe you have a near-death experience and you see the light, or an angel saves you one day. But however you discover spirituality, it's there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times maybe the two can kind of become one misinterpreted, but everybody's definition of or experience or whatever they like to pursue is different with respect to spirituality, religion. And I agree, like maybe religion is an introduction or a gateway to spirituality, but jumping back into ayahuasca, like it's not something that's just come up, right? It's old.
For sure.
Yeah. Like it's been around for I want to say like centuries. It's not something that's just popped up and people are just going down to the Amazon and having these out-of-body experiences with ayahuasca.
Yeah, it's a couple thousand years old.
Yeah.
These guys, these shamans, to learn about the plants, they talk to the plants. And how do they do that? They fast and just eat that one plant. They'll go into the forest for it's like 30 days or maybe more. And the only thing that they will eat is that plant that they want to learn from, and do this with these various plants. And they learn from the plants by tripping out on these plants. And even if it's not a psychedelic, you're not eating, you're just meditating, and you're just absorbing the energy of this plant. And they believe that everything has a spirit, that all things have a spirit. The chair you're sitting on, the snowcat that you're driving, not just things. If you have a problem with alcohol, that's a spirit of alcohol that has attached itself to you, that is feeding off of you. It's using you. Spirit of anything, spirit of whatever. But that's what they believe. And that's why they say that the ayahuasca can heal anything, because anything and everything is a spirit. And the ayahuasca is considered the gateway. It's a DMT. And you find DMT in multiple things in nature, but it doesn't allow, you can't absorb it. You can smoke it, you can eat it only if you do it with this plant, this ayahuasca. And so ayahuasca is the vine, and there's a bush that is filled with DMT. And so you mix the vine and the bush together. The vine, the ayahuasca, allows your body to absorb the DMT without destroying it, which is what normally happens if you ingest DMT. It is destroyed on contact. But this ayahuasca allows you to absorb it, and off and away you go.
I remember reading about this in school back in the day, and it's not like you're taking the plant and ingesting the plant, like you're not picking the leaf or the root and out of the earth and you're just eating it. It is a I don't want to call it like a milkshake or something, but it's like a drink or something.
It is a drink.
Okay, yeah, like it's a drink. And
it is a drink, yeah.
But what you're saying too is that I didn't know this. So if you take one without the other, or you don't eat the root, then there's no experience.
No, nothing.
Nothing. Wow.
Zero. Absolutely zero. And it's not a drink. It's a sludge. It's a mud. It's disgusting. It tastes like earth. It tastes so bad. And the first time you take it, maybe it's not so bad. But every time after that, it gets worse and worse and worse. It is the most disgusting stuff to drink. And it's that sludge. It's got like chunks in it. It's really thick. So you can't just throw it back like a shot at the bar and just be done with it. And then it's one and done. It just gets in your teeth. It's all in your mouth. And you have to spend the next 5 minutes like trying to get that crap out of your mouth. And the flavor's there. And you just sit there with that flavor in your mouth, and then you start to trip, and then you need to shit, and then you need to throw up, and it's just not a nice experience. A lot of people are there. It's become trendy, like we were saying. It's more than 1,000 years old, a couple thousand years old, but it has become trendy. Some of it for the wrong reasons. There's people there just to check it out, but there's also a lot of people there with a lot of problems. And you see some heavy stuff, people going through some heavy stuff, and they're fighting their demons. They're confronting their demons. And the stories that come out of there are so out of this world, kind of. They're literally, no, they're not of this world. They're of the spirit world. And when you would tell me these kind of stories before, I would say, yeah. Good story. You say you believe in the fairy tale and the Sasquatch too. I wouldn't have any faith for that before, but after being there and the things that I experienced and the things that the person next to you experienced, everybody has such a unique experience, and they're all just intense and weird. No, that's not true. They're not all intense. There were a couple of people there that had nothing, that got nothing from it, which was strange too. Apparently marijuana is a big inhibitor if you're smoking weed before you get there, because the weed is a feminine spirit. And the way they saw it was it's a feminine spirit, it's possessive, and she has a hold on you. And the marijuana will, this is what they believe, right? The marijuana will give you the one thing that you want in life and basically take the rest of the things out of your life, take the rest of those things away from you. And then ayahuasca, they call it the grandmother, also a feminine spirit. So you've got these two feminine spirits. And then if you've been smoking weed, the marijuana won't allow the ayahuasca to have any effect. And there were people having that.
Yeah, well, DMT is a Schedule 1 hallucinogenic.
What does that mean? It's super illegal, or what is Schedule 1?
Yeah, that's a good question. Schedule 1 is a controlled substance. Yes, that's correct. Schedule 1, hallucinogenic, narcotic, all those. Schedule 1 is a controlled substance. Like in the movie Pineapple Express, where the guy's like, illegal.
It's so dumb because it's not addictive. It's totally natural, and you're not going to hurt yourself on it. The one thing that you are not allowed to do is to be on psychological drugs to help you, like antidepressants. If you're on antidepressants or anything like that, that was considered a deadly combination, which was interesting.
Well, you made it down there and you made it back. So, and I'm stoked you're talking about it on the Blade Dive. Did you ever figure out why you went down there? I know you said that you didn't know kind of why you were going down there, but did you ever have the vision of or the experience showing you why you went down there?
I didn't know. I didn't know why I was going down there, but it was about my father, the relationship with between myself and my father, and that was super heavy. It's heavy because it gives you an experience. It takes you there. Okay, for example, there was a guy there that in his session, he was next to his child on a day that was really rough for him. He'd gone to school, the bullies were beating him up, and he was there with his kid, and he was watching what was happening. This all happens in a flash moment, but time is relative or whatever that is. But he experienced his child's day. He also experienced his wife's day, and he was never there in a physical form, but what he was there for was when they came home, and he was a real asshole to both of them. And this was a year ago or a year before, 2 years before. And when he had this experience, he experienced their day before he was an asshole to them. And it was super heavy. He was crying about it and what a dick he was to his kid and his wife. He's walking away from the ceremony. The ceremony's finished. He's walking back to his hut through the jungle in the night. He pulls out his phone, and on his phone was a notification of a message. He pushes it. He didn't even know it was there. It was a message from his wife. No, I'm sorry. It was a recording of him and his wife speaking, and he didn't even know how he recorded it, but it was from that day. He had a conversation and recorded it from that day. And it just gave him this other perspective. And when I had my experience with my dad, I went there. I was there with him in 3 different situations, all like flash, flash, flash. And it's so heavy that you're there. It's not a dream. And I'm telling you these stories, they're crazy. And when you hear these stories before you go there, you're like, yeah, it sounds all super crazy, but that shit is so real. But if you want to change your perspective on things, that's out there, that exists. But I just wanted to come back to that and say, you don't need to go to Peru to do this.
Dude, what an experience, man. And I mean, from his point of view, and that's really cool that you figured out why you went down there, or had the vision of why you went down there. But there are, I guess, like, I want to advocate really quickly too, like, there are other ways to change, like there are other ways to change your perspective and gain insight on how you can be different. I don't think either of us are advocating for people to go down there and do that. I guess I want to get that message out there and make that really clear too to everybody that's listening.
Yeah, and be careful with that stuff, because I smoked it down there too. I got it from this guy. He was a drug dealer. He was just he's just a drug dealer. But I did it because I wanted to experience DMT, and I thought, it won't hurt any. But basically, it knocked me out. He made me smoke way more than I wanted, way more than my tolerance could hold, and I passed out. And the waking up from that was terrifying, because you're like not here, you're not there, and you don't know where you are. So I'd just say, if you're going to smoke DMT, like, take it easy, because you can knock yourself right out with that stuff.
I'm just stoked that you're willing to talk about it and share your story and your adventure and your time down there in the Amazon and talk about it. That's what we do on the Blade Dive, man. We go deep. We talk about life. We've been talking for quite some time. I do want to get into the push road question of the day. I think that would be a good transition. So let's do that really quick.
The push road question of the day.
Yes, I love the push road question of the day. Your first push road question comes from Mr. Ben Finn. What up, Ben? And Ben wants to know about Justin Bieber. He says to ask you about Justin Bieber. You got a connection there with Mr. Biebs, Jeremy?
Oh, he likes to think this is a story. I cannot convince him that I wasn't listening to Justin Bieber. It was the freaking radio. And he got into my cat, and Justin Bieber was playing. And he is just so convinced that I was jamming out to Justin Bieber. So, Ben, I've told him this story so many times, but he will not believe me. He still thinks I'm totally a fan.
Hey, on the radio, sometimes even the Backstreet Boys can be definitely a motivational song that comes on. I mean, I don't give a shit. Like, so what? You listen to Justin Bieber. Ben, quit hating on Justin Bieber.
You're right. Ben's hoping that someday I will admit to it. Someday, maybe.
Secretly, Ben Finn likes Justin Bieber as well. So just throwing that out there. Let's see, your next push road question is from Merik. I believe that's how you say it. He's from Switzerland, specifically Zermatt. And his question to you is, why the 300 Polar at Laax? Or I should say 300 Polar.
So, all of Switzerland knows that I run a 300 at Laax. So that was what I was basically complaining about before, about why do we need so much power? Why do they need to be so heavy? I want to feel the machine. I want to know what's going on with it. And so I said, I don't want your 600. Just leave me the 400. Just leave me the old 400, and that'll be just fine. And so they asked me, well, what would you prefer then? And halfway joking, I said, give me a 300, and halfway serious too. And they took me seriously on that. And that was super cool of Laax. And that was Luki Zush that pushed through on that. And he looked into it. And what we were able to do is buy a 300 Polar with sticks, with a new engine, new pumps. What else would have been new on there? Tracks. It was still the original cab, still the original chassis. The blade was new. It was a big blade anyhow. I don't know if it's new. And it was still the original 300 tiller, which is not perfect. That 300 tiller is not great, but they got that 300 for me, and I like it. I still like it. That's why we have the 300 at Laax, is because I didn't want the 600.
Yeah, but see, that's dope, though, because that's the manufacturer and the resort going, hey, yeah, we'll support you there. I think
was
that's
awesome.
great.
We paid a lot less for it, too. That was another reason why I think it went through, was because we paid less for it. It was a refurbished machine as opposed to a new machine, but to us, it was a brand new machine. It was brand new engine, brand new pumps. And it was a great idea in theory. A couple of small things that didn't go so well with it was it has the old hydraulic system in it. The blade was kind of slow. The Cat, when we got it, was so fast. It was the fastest machine on the mountain, faster than the 600s, ridiculously fast. If you didn't slow down, you would have broken the mirrors with the chunks, the snowballs that were flying. They were flying over the blade. This machine is going so fast. It had wheels, but it had no torque. It had no Dre moment, for my Swiss friends, torque. You couldn't turn the machine. Like, if you wanted to take off with one track, it wouldn't even move the machine with one track. So it was like a 10-speed bicycle stuck in 10th gear. So we changed the hydraulic system. I don't know enough about the hydraulic system to know what we changed, but we changed the torque in it. We made it super torquey, which was great. It worked so much better. One of the things you need the torque for is cleaning up the floor. You got most of the pressure of cleaning up the floor is on one track. And if you don't have that torque, you need that one track to do most of the work. So that's the reason you need a torquey machine to clean up the floor, or I do anyhow. But that's the one thing that didn't go so well. When we changed it, we had a bunch of torque, but now the machine's super slow. It's really slow. Now it's the slowest machine out there, but I still like it.
That's cool. Moving right along. Next push road question and last push road question comes from Tyrone Coyne, and he wants to know, can you work on 10 inches of snow?
Tyrone, thanks for writing in. I know you're roasting me right now, and I deserve it for sure. I worked at Mountain High with Tyrone for a couple of months. I didn't last very long. I was super green in the machine. I had 3 years in Breck. Or was it 4? Well, I was green in the machine, and I was so nervous to go and work with these guys. Tyrone was such a pro in the park. Everybody was such a pro in the park, and I didn't really have that much experience. I felt comfortable in the machine, but making stuff look clean and all this, I choked. I totally choked, and I worked on this. What was it? The landing of a rail, and I turned up dirt. And they kicked me out of the machine. I could give me one chance.
No shit, really?
To prove myself.
Wow.
Yeah. I got taken out of a machine, and it was such a bummer. I was so crushed. But we had a guy come to Laax this year and to try out, and he was super nervous. And I understand that when you go to a new job and you don't have that much experience, you know what the machine does, but I didn't have that much experience, and I totally choked and I looked like an ass. But I ended up quitting that job because it was in the machine or nothing for me. They were gonna keep me on the rake because I was more valuable to them on a rake. I could shape everything, but I quit because at that point I had already been through the same situation with copper, and it was machine or nothing for me, so I left.
Wow, Jeremy, and talking about like bad breaks, learning experiences. That's a cool story. Thanks, Tyrone. And a big shout out to everybody that contributed this week for the Push Road questions of the day. If you didn't make this show, no stress. Just look for the next guest announcement to drop either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when I'm interviewing. Those are going to pop up on Instagram stories. And thanks so much to everybody that contributed.
The push row question of the day.
I'm gonna go deep blade dive with you here, Jeremy. Do you ever feel like your life, if you were to play it out on a motion picture, could be a movie? Like with just respect to the opportunities that you've been given? Does that make sense? Like, do you feel like what you've been? Because we've talked about a lot of stuff, man. Like we've talked about so many things that you've done with your career, and we've also talked about experiences you've had and the people you've been around. And I have to wonder, if you were to sit back and look at it and reflect, do you look at it as some kind of like movie, like a motion picture, because of the opportunities that you've had within life?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never really looked at it that way. I don't know. I was so asleep in my 20s. I worked my way through my 30s, and now I'm 40 something. And I'm just starting to wake up, honestly. I'm really just starting to wake up.
Do you think that has a lot to do with the fact that you were maybe pouring yourself into the job more so than you were into just life, and focusing more on work, I guess, would be the better way to phrase that?
I don't know. I mean, my 20s, I was just self-absorbed. The 30s, I kind of lost myself in this in somebody else's world, kind of like I felt like I was working for somebody else. But yeah, I just wasn't present. I just haven't been present. And I'm just starting to feel like I'm aware of life in general.
I've got another special guest question that's going to keep us in the blade dive here, in the deep blade dive. It is from Lucas Zuscht. You work with Lukey at Laax. Stoked that he's contributed, and I'll play it for you now.
Hey, Jeremy. So you're one of the most experienced operator that I know, and it's a pleasure to learn a lot from you. You were in a lot of places and you know a lot. But my question for you is, why do you like pipes so much? Why did you not choose to be the best slope style operator or the best slope operator? Why are you liking or loving that pipe so much? What's the point of that pipe?
I got stuck in it, Zoosh, man. Yeah, thanks for calling in, Buki. That's good. I didn't think you did it. But I got stuck in the half pipe. That's basically what happened. Jumps were my first passion. I loved riding jumps. Before I was in the machine, I loved riding jumps. Just that air time and so cool. Straight air, no grab on those all day long too. I could do some spins, but I didn't learn too much with it. But jumps were my first passion, and I wasn't able to stick with it because I went and worked with Frank. And Frank was and still is the OG of half pipes. And they said, well, you've worked with Frank and you know about half pipes, so you should go to the half pipe. And, I kicked and screamed and cried my way to the half pipe. And in the beginning, I would just cut the half pipe super quick and then run out of there to go do other things, to go help other people, because it wasn't really where I wanted to be. But at some point, and it wasn't the first year, that's for sure, at some point, years into it, I just realized that if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make it my place. It's going to be my hell. It's going to be my haven, and it's just going to be my little zone. If it's going to be shit, it's because of me. If it's going to be good, it's up to me, and it's just going to be my little world. And in the beginning, I didn't want to be in there, but now that I'm an older, saltier person, it suits me super well because I would just rather be by myself. I would just rather be doing my own thing, be responsible for something. And God, if I was still working in the park, I don't know if I would still be an adult working in the half pipe or in the terrain park, because there's so many different opinions on how it should be, and they're all really cool. Everybody's got a creative idea on it. It's just getting it done, and the egos are everywhere, and the politics are everywhere. But for me to navigate that daily, I'm not sure if my personality could have handled it. I'm just better to just put me to the side, let me do my little thing, and I'll be happier that way. So that's how I ended up in half pipes. I got stuck in it, but I do love half pipes. Don't get me wrong. I did really start to enjoy it, and I love riding half pipe. So it's been great, and I plan on continuing it for a while.
We have definitely talked a lot about what it's like to build, but we have not talked a lot about the tools in the backpack or the additional accessories that you need to sometimes achieve the quality that you're looking for beyond the Snowcat. But what do you got in that backpack? Like, do you got 24 pack of Gatorade? You got lasers? You got a lightsaber? You got a level? What do you got? Like, you got a Batman belt? What do you want?
I wish I had a samurai sword. Oh, yeah. Just normal stuff. One of the things that I do that's kind of my signature, I guess, whether I like it or not, is the hip, my Batman belt, the flashlight and a Leatherman on my hip. And everybody gives me shit about it until the day they need it. And then they stop giving me shit about it. It's so funny.
Ain't that the truth, though?
Yeah. And then other than that, I do have a laser for sure. It's my one-stop shop. That thing can give you degrees. I think it's becoming a common tool now. It's a pretty cheap tool. It's like $80 from Bosch. It'll tell you how tall stuff is without getting under it, which is very useful in a pile of snow. And it tells you the degrees and distances. It's a very nice tool to have.
That's awesome. That's good intel to know too. Yeah, the Batman belt. I'd be stoked to have the Batman belt with like, or the Go-Go Gadget belt with like the channel locks where it's like Go-Go Gadget channel locks, just and they're right there. Like,
no, it's not channel locks. Oh, but that's what you want. I just have a flashlight and a Leatherman.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you got the Batman belt with all these little go-to things all around the waist of the belt, and it's like channel locks, flashlight, whatever. It's just
chainsaw. You got to get a chainsaw hanging off of there.
Yeah, like a little electric chainsaw. Like that'd be the shit. A little nee. Actually, it probably wouldn't make that sound because it's electric. It'd probably be like. Moving along, the title of best half-pipe builder in the world is something that you have definitely been given by so many people that I've talked to. They think you're the shit. They think that your product is amazing, and I think that's something to hang your hat on. But I want to know how you feel about that title. Well, obviously, Laax is your arena, and you're producing that product there alongside other people that help you, but how do you feel about that title, best in the world?
I don't like those titles. It's embarrassing. I think it's nice. It's super nice to say that. And like Frank had said on his, that it was the best pipe every day. And that's so cool. I love hearing that for sure. My ego is so stoked on that. But it's not true. Like the snow changes every day. It's not the best every day. But I love that people think that. And I love that people enjoy that thing because I enjoy it too. And I don't know, proud papa, I guess. And that's my baby. And Laax, we joke about it and call it my wife because anytime I want to do something, I've got to ask her first if I can or not.
Oh man. Well, the reason why I want to talk about it is because is that the goal? I feel like a lot of people set out with, it doesn't matter what you're doing, if it's sport, if it's athletics, whatever, if it's sport or if it's athletics, if it's sport or if it's academics, there we go. Either way, like you want to be good. And I think there's a difference between wanting to be good and wanting to be the best. And maybe some people try to go out and emulate or copy or be similar to that style that they're seeing. It's kind of like rock and roll. Like bands back in like the first ever creation of rock and roll didn't have anything to fucking go off of. So they were just doing what they needed to do, just like anything else that's never existed. But should people chase being the best or their process? What should they chase?
Yeah, I don't think you need to strive for that. If you want a good half pipe, you're going to do it. So yeah, I guess it's more of the process. I think the only thing important with any feature, wherever you are, if you're grooming the piece, if you're grooming the park, if you're grooming the pipe, you got to ride it. You got to ride it. It's okay if you don't, but
yeah, it's I don't know. It's like it's I guess it's more interesting than anything else because you've got a lot of people that probably hang their hat on their product, probably more so than they should. And here you are. You're being doted upon as the best, and you're taking a big step back and going, I don't want that because I just don't need it. I'd rather not. Thank you very much.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from doing the events, and there's so much pressure on the events, and I've had them blow up my face so much. And way, way, way before anybody said great pipe, they said, the pipe's not so good. You gotta, it hurts in the beginning and it's hard to forget that. And you don't get the pipe right. It's such a finicky little thing. And it can blow up in your face at any moment. These events really, something can go wrong with some small detail that'll show up and haunt you at the finals, or the finals can go bad at any moment. Even the side slippers, if they're not doing their job right, they can put bumps in the floor. There's just so many little things that can blow up in your face. And so when people say great half pipe, what goes through my mind is, first of all, yeah, thank you. Second is, let's see what it is tomorrow. because I don't know if it's going to be anywhere near this good tomorrow.
Ooh, that's such a good point. Never thought of it like that. Super cool take on that. Elliot Cohn is your next special guest question. I will go ahead and play that for you right now. Here we go.
Yo, Jay, it's your buddy Elliot. I hope you are enjoying your podcast endeavor. Jay, you're one of the hardest working operators, and you're at the top of the half tube community. You've had the chance to work with a lot of hard-working people that like to play pretty hard as well, though. Talk about some of the highs and lows you've had while you've been in the snowboard community, whether it's on the hill or off the hill, but keep it around the industry. Talk soon, Jay.
The highs and lows. I would say most of it is around those events, working for SPT. Especially the lows, the extremely long hours, long days, and the disappointments. Putting in such huge hours and then have it not be right at the end. Those hurt. And then the highs is also probably those events, when it does come out good. And one of my favorite times was when it was the Breck Do Tour, and I was in so much trouble for not this. Okay, this is it's not personal, but I made it personal, which was my mistake. SPT was asking me to let Breckenridge do the floor of the Halfpipe for me, for my Halfpipe. And most people do that, and that's cool. I'm not able to do that, unfortunately. I'm too OCD about it, I guess. And I kind of want to do my own floor. And that got me into a lot of trouble. And I was really low in that event. There were a lot of shitty things happened in that event. But at the finals, on the night of the finals, Sean White in the tent, he's doing his thing. He's warming up. He's jamming to he's got his headphones on, pacing back and forth. And I walked into the athlete tent, the warm-up tent, and he looks up and he sees me, and he's super happy, and he just walks through the crowd straight at me, gives me a big slap five, pull in for a hug, and he's like, feeling this, I'm feeling it. He was just super, super stoked, and he won the competition, and he went freaking huge on this first air. And that was one of the highlights of my career, like those type of moments where, it really went well, and we had a good show. And so the highs and lows, I would say, all hinge around those events.
So you did the floor and for that event, and you did not let Breck do the floor.
I did. Yeah, I did. And I don't know. I go back and forth with that. If I should have given it up, but I couldn't. And I don't think I would. I kind of know that I wouldn't. I still wouldn't.
Well, do tell. What was the consequence? I mean, you didn't do as you were told. I mean, what happened?
It was just politics. It was mostly politics. Like, work was kind of pissed. Breckenridge was kind of pissed. Everybody's kind of pissed. It was just basically politics. But, there was no, as far as I was concerned, nothing beyond that.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. So you didn't do as you were told. You went with your gut. You did the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah. You went with your gut. It worked though. The Sean went huge. Everybody had the riders had a good night.
It worked in the end. It was a risk, and Heartless Elliot Cohn, he backed me up on that. SPT wanted me to let Breck do the floor, and I pleaded with Elliot. I said, "Man, this is please, like this is what I want. This is what I got. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to risk it." And that's what it was to me. It was a risk to let somebody else do the floor. And I just, there was too much on the line. Too much of my blood was in that thing to let somebody else do it. And it could have been perfect. And when my even my pipes, even when people say they're perfect, I've never seen one of my pipes that I thought I was perfect. I always see something in there that's like, oh yeah, not good enough. And if somebody else would have done it, I would have been doing that, and I just would have been disappointed. So, I did right by me, but it did get me in trouble.
Yeah. Well, you're rolling the dice is never emotionally easy. And then also sitting back too and watching somebody else do something that you were massively a part of building. I don't know what I would have done there. Young, I'm just putting myself in your shoes. That would have been tough to swallow. But I mean, you'll probably never forget that night though. Like that's one of those moments where you go, holy shit.
Oh, for sure. I'll never forget that. But yeah. Thank God that it went that good. Because if it didn't, wow, that would have been terrible.
Yeah, it would have. We kind of warmed up on this topic earlier in the conversation, but I want to hit it again because I think it's important. Everything costs money to build, obviously, in the terrain park. But what do you think the ROI is for a resort building a half pipe?
It's pretty hard to calculate, I think. So much of it is marketing. I guess maybe that's easy to calculate from the market if they can do that. But then the value that it presents to the ski area, it's a unique feature, right? You're not going to get it anywhere else. It's not on the ski runs. It's not in the park. You got tranny features in the park, but it's not the same thing. What is the return? I think it's just a unique piece that you can't get any other way, and to go through that initial sticker shock of the cost of the build, because it is expensive to build a half pipe, even if you're building a small one. They're not so cheap. But it's for everybody. The half pipe, everybody enjoys the half pipe, right? If you can get them into it, they'll enjoy it. If you can get people into the half pipe, they'll enjoy it. I'm constantly trying to get ski school to bring their people to the half pipe, which is not a common idea. Most of the old salty people at the half pipe get really pissed when a ski school group shows up to the pipe. But man, these are the people that are paying for it. And Perisher was so fun because they had so many people in it of every level. And the return on investment with that pipe and Perisher was just like a centerpiece, this really cool feature that was being used by everybody right in front. It is a nice feature. It's a super nice feature. And the more of those that can happen, the more of those that people get into them and keep riding them, I think we can keep it alive. Because the kids, the families, the pros, it's the one-stop shop for everything you want, like that hard turn, the air, the speed. The half pipe's great.
I agree, and I think I'll weigh in from just the experience standpoint. I'll go back to, I've referenced that before. Like we're always, or resorts or and places to ski and snowboard are selling an experience, and so if you're building something that's more inclusive and it's more of your one-stop shop, like you're saying, then I think you've really got to understand who your customer is. That's where the ultimate ROI is. Because you can go out and sell that space, right? You can sell it for training. You can sell it for an event. You can sell it for whatever you want. But at the end of the day, if it's usable every day, that's the win, right? You're allowing people to experience something fun that they're not afraid of, and go out and get some air, make some fun turns.
But I want to go back to the cost on that too. The cost of those things for the build, it is expensive, but you have to look at it in more of a long-term investment too. It's going to last all season. The features in the park, you're building those and rebuilding those. The initial cost isn't as much, but still there's a lot of effort going on everywhere. And I think you need to look at the half pipe as a longer term return as opposed to the short term.
Yes. Marginal benefit versus marginal cost. If we were just to chalk it up to all of that, straight up, it costs money to make money. And so if you're going to spur on the future of what will be transition features, I think what Crush is doing with the Holy Bully stuff, and I think Halfpipes, however big they need to be and want to be, knowing your customer, are relevant to nurturing the future forward for people who want to learn how to ski and ride. You have also contributed to the Stomping Grounds, Jeremy, and I think it's really cool that I've had yourself, Charles, and Brandon all on the podcast. And I would be curious to know, because I view you as a big pillar, a part of that team, what's it like working alongside Brandon and Charles, or with them rather? And fill us in on that, because you're a pretty big pillar in that project.
It's good. It's super good. I like working with those guys. The way that works is I build the pipe before they arrive. So when they're building the park, I'm maintaining the pipe at that point. And I wish I could work with those guys more. When I said before that I was stuck in the half pipe and that's where it just held me, it's true on every aspect. I just don't get to see those guys and what they're doing. And both of those guys are such wicked operators, and how they build stuff is, I think it's really interesting how they build stuff. Brandon doing the rails, these guys, the hand shapers, they always come back and say, yeah, the way he does it is efficient, fast, cool, great, but I miss out on it most of the time. But working with those guys is really cool. Charles is so he's a great boss. He's such an easygoing guy, and he's so generous with everything, and it's nice working with those guys.
Yeah, well, and this may not happen, but I'd be curious, if you finish cutting the pipe early one night, do you ever go sit and ride in the passenger seat with Charles or Brandon?
If I get the opportunity, yeah. I love the passenger seat. It's like Frank always says, work's getting done and I'm not doing it.
Well, I geek out on the passenger seat too. I really enjoy the passenger seat. I wish it was a little bit more comfortable, but I always have a good time riding along with people.
It's relaxing too to me. Like the pressure's not on me, and even if there is no pressure, it's just super relaxing. I'll ride the passenger seat any day.
Here's I'll throw this at you really quick. Kind of the catchphrase or the commentary of, pro snowboarders go to the powder to retire. Does the contractor expert half-pipe builder go to the resort to retire?
I like Laax because I still have one event to keep my name relevant.
Do you think that staying relevant is super important to your career? Not
necessarily, but at this point where I am, I do want to remain relevant at this point. At some point in time, I will definitely disappear into some mom and pop shop where I can ride powder.
Well, just don't go off into the abyss somewhere where we can't have some more Jeremy Carpenter in our lives. Just remain locatable. I guess that's the best way I could put it. Jeremy, we have talked at length about so much, and I know there's more that we could discuss, but man, I just want to take a minute and say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, your night to come on the podcast and just talk about all things that are you and your journey throughout your career, man. I just want to take a minute and say thanks. I think we really just created something cool this evening. So many stories, and I'm just grateful. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. I was happy to do it.
Huge thank you to Jeremy Carpenter for being this week's Blade Dive episode. If you are not following the podcast yet, that would mean a lot if you could do that. You can support this channel by doing so. Subscribe, leave us a review, let us know what you think. Another way that you can support the channel is to follow us on social media at The Blade Dive. And lastly, be sure to tell a friend. That's how this thing grows organically. Okay, you know the deal. Don't be a dick. Please fill your machine up with diesel at the end of your shift.